On today's podcast, we're talking all about buyers. Come join us.
Welcome to Community Real Estate Roots, Agents Building Relationships, where we explore the heart of real estate through meaningful connections as they guide you through stories behind every sold sign and dive into how agents nurture communities, one home and one relationship at a time.
Welcome back. So I have a question. Has anyone had any bad feedback with the new buyer agency? Has anybody had any problems with it? I have.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say bad. I would say different because, again, when we have this conversation, I always go back to we are a buyer agency state. We're a buyer agency state before this happened.
Before any of it happened.
Before any of it happened,
do not realize that.
No, they don't. And the problem is, and hence that's what led to the situation that we're in, is, you can pick and choose how you want to address something. And unfortunately, was many agents across the country that let a buyer just do whatever they wanted to do. And there was structure. There's supposed to be structure then, and there is structure now. So it's kind of like changing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to take a minute for that to happen. They say it, takes 31 days to change a behavior. It's taking us a little longer.
It's definitely
than 31 days.
Yeah.
And I think it's better. It just, when it happens so stressful.
Yeah, because it's changed. Nobody wants
to change. Well,
and
it's like...
Even though it's not a change, it's a change to us to enforce it the way we need to enforce it.
Right.
So it's a little bit of stressful at certain times.
Well, and I've said this before, I don't think the consumer realizes that our industry is very mandated. I mean, it's
regulated.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
They don't understand it.
No, they just think, we hang out at home or the ball fields and we do all this stuff, and then somebody calls and goes, "Oh, we get to go play with the house."
Well, there's a lot of emotion there. And so
you're
dealing with people
for
that
sure.
are fueled by emotion, and you're trying to introduce logic and adherence to the regulations that are, hold us in place. Because we have the AREC we have to follow, we've got the code we have to follow.
Right.
And then we have our broker's guidance that we have to follow as
Right.
well. And when you're trying to slow their rolls, you don't want to curb their enthusiasm, but you're like, "Hey guys, I need to sit down here and talk to you for a minute about this document."
Right.
And then when you're explaining to them, I mean, there's times where you're looking at them and you can see the light bulb is not turning on, and you're like, "Let me cover this again." And it's almost like you're trying to cover sub-agency, which is a sticky subject anyway.
Well, the good news is that's against the law in Alabama.
Right.
So you don't really have to explain it.
But, so when they're super excited, they're coming to the door, they want to go see this property, they want to, this is going to be great for little Tony and our dog Spot, and and you're like, "Okay, guys, let's slow down. Let's talk about this because before I'm authorized to show you anything, we have to talk about this document. We got to get this signed." And if they refuse to sign, then that kind of makes it a sour note.
I was gonna say I've had personally a little bit of pushback on the documents, but that's how I'm finding if people are really serious about getting out there too. If they're not wanting to sign it, then they're really not that serious. Once you get it explained and everything, I've not had too many issues. I've had a couple of hesitations, but
I've had a little bit of success just taking it out of our world and putting it to another one, because I had a young couple that was the same thing that they were kind of pushing back on. And I said, "Okay, so let me ask you this. So if you came down with the flu or strep throat or whatever, and you went to the urgent care down the street, before you would see that nurse or a doctor, what would the girl behind the glass give you to do?"
Paperwork.
Paperwork
And they would say, I have to fill something out. And I'm
that
like,
says you're
okay.
liable for this,
Yes,
this, and this.
right. And I said, so, what is it about that paperwork that you have to do? And I said, it's no different than, I mean, you can use so many examples of where you have to fill something out, whether it's electronically. I had a follow-up checkup appointment today, just routine. And 2 days ago, I get a text on my phone that says pre-check-in. And the pre-check-in is going down a laundry list of things to make sure that it's still the same. But I still had to do it. I still had to go to the window. I still had to check in. She had to check to make sure I did all that. So we're not the only industry that happens.
No.
You can't hire an attorney without paperwork.
Right.
You can't go to the dentist without paperwork. I don't even know what you can do these days.
You can't even take your dog to the vet without paperwork.
No, you can't. And the questions they ask about your pets are like really intense sometimes too. So I think it's
Poor Spot.
yeah, poor
Spot.
Spot.
Little Tony's going to be upset.
I think it's just we're in a society that you have to bring everything back to reality and remind them what they do day in and day out. I mean, you can't go inside of a bank and tell them I want to withdraw $500 and they go, "Oh, okay, give me your name." And then they hand you $500.
But I think part of it too, though, is that if you look at the frequency with which people utilize those other services, whether it's a veterinarian, a doctor, or dentist, a lawyer, or whatever, they're more apt to utilize those services more frequently than they are in buying a house. Because when you're looking at probably 5 to 7 years in the turnover for homes, then people just aren't as desensitized to the situation as they
Yeah,
are
that's
further.
true. But I mean, I just went and picked up a prescription. Well, guess what you got to do before you get paid
Name,
for it?
date of birth,
Yeah,
address.
And you have to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want somebody to talk to you or you don't want
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
to talk to you? And if you don't want somebody to talk to you, you're signing, making sure they know
Right.
that you
You
did
don't
not
need the
want
counseling.
you did not want counseling. So
Mhm.
you better hope you don't go home and you're allergic to it, because
Yeah, it's
you
just fish oil.
you signed. It's okay. I mean, I think it's just about understanding. We're always gonna have those ones that want to go see that one house. And that's fine. We can do that. And honestly, I like it better now that we have to do at least a one-time
One-time
showing agreement,
Mm-hmm.
because I promise you, there's plenty of people that you showed houses in the past and nobody did the paperwork that they were supposed to do, never called you again, went to another agent, gave them the same list of houses,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up contracting one. There's nothing you can do about it because
You didn't get the sign.
you didn't go over any type of agency agreement with them. But now, all over the United States is required to have buyer signatures and understanding that we don't work for free.
Mhm.
And we caused this, I say we, the industry. I mean, you would see even signs a year ago, because all this just really started happening in the spring. You could see a directional sign on a corner that says, buyers, buyers are free. There's no, well,
Right.
I mean,
It cost you $0
it cost you
for me
$0
to represent
for me, and I'm like, okay,
That's not true.
well, and I use those examples when a consumer wants to know how we got there, and I said because people wanted to say they worked for free, they didn't work for free. The seller was paying it without the seller realizing
Mm-hmm.
that
There was an option.
that they were doing it, and it's again always negotiable. Seller could have always said, no, I'm not paying that.
Mhm.
And our buyer agency even said that a third party could pay for it. So, I mean, that's been going on. So, I think it will continue to get better. I think the positive part is I think it will weed out those people. First of all, if you got
The
somebody
serious ones.
with they get upset because you won't take them out to see a house, I would probably be 90% sure they can't buy a house. They just want to go dream about one,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, you go to the mall and go window shopping, right? You don't have any money. I mean,
Mr. Crowd over there.
I don't think any, I don't think anybody does that anymore. But there was a hunting store in Calera. He'd be go window shopping. You would. Don't even sit over there.
I would go in to buy something. I don't.
Okay. Well, that's window shopping. You can buy something window shopping.
I look at stuff on the internet all the time. You know?
Yeah. Well, who
Internet
doesn't do that
shopping, yeah.
anymore?
Like Jeep stuff. I mean,
So I think we just have to be prepared on how we explain it.
Mm-hmm.
I think some are like that because it's just not explained very well, and we make it a big deal. It's not a big deal. The world's not coming to the end
Despite
if you
what
don't
the media
sign it,
says.
or if you do it. And it's like all this. I tell them, I go, this gives me permission to take you in this house. Without this piece of paper, I don't have permission to go in this house.
yeah. Without this and showing time, it's called breaking and entering.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, I don't have permission. This allows me to work with you, whether it's a week, a day, or it's a year.
Right.
This tells me that I'm allowed to support you. I have to follow the standards of the industry. There are laws.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably more laws than people
Are aware of.
And
And that's part of why I love this industry. It's like
Yeah.
there's just, I mean, there are rules and regulations to abide to, and
Right.
there are non-negotiables, and I mean, there are some gray areas, but by and large, if when in doubt, I mean, you can download the rules and regulations on your phone. I have a copy right here. I mean, seriously, I do.
well, and see the thing that and I think about saying this or not saying this, but anyway, people want to say that it's an Alabama law. This paperwork is not an Alabama law.
Mm-mm.
It's not written into Alabama law. It's a national.
Mandate.
It's a national mandate, and can you decide not to do it? You can, but
There's been a precedent set.
there has been, and the lawsuit was just not a lawsuit that at the end it's like, okay, it's over with, whatever. It was a class action lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So the settlements take care of the people that settled, and they can't basically bring you back into a new class action lawsuit based on this subject. Whereas if you weren't protected in that, you could be named in another class action lawsuit down the way. So there's a reason that we all need to follow the same rules and make sure the paperwork is done correctly. We just had an agent in the office had a situation where the other agent called. She had the seller side, she had the list side,
Oh yeah.
and the agent called, just like all of them are doing. Are you offering buyer compensation? Yes. Just by the way, if they ask how much, don't. It's negotiating. It's negotiated in the contract.
Put it in the
Yep.
contract.
Yeah, put it in the contract. Which they had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It was very specific on what
And if this is the one I'm thinking
the
about,
compensation that was. Unfortunately for the buyer's agent, he called and asked. He didn't put it in the contract.
But he wasn't just an agent; he was a broker too.
Well, it's a
Learning process for all of us.
yeah. But there's two of them that work in the office. They probably don't even have this stuff just because they're small. They don't think about it. But when the contract was presented to the seller, we had done a great job and said, seller, you can negotiate this when we get the contract. Well, he got the contract and it wasn't there. Well, he was a happy person that was saving him 2.5%. And he goes, okay, I'll accept it right the way that
It's written.
it's written. And she said, well, he didn't put in the compensation. And the seller goes, well, I don't guess he
Wanted it.
I don't
Wants to
guess
get
he
paid.
needed to get paid. Long story short, it went
Back and forth.
back and forth, but he didn't even notice it until the information went to the title and attorney's office. The instructions on who's getting paid what, and under the buyer agency, there was no compensation. So he
So-
never answered the phone before, but guess how fast he made a phone call when he saw that. But it literally took them almost 2 weeks to negotiate it out.
So I missed that part. So he actually forgot to put it in his buyer agency agreement.
No, he didn't put it in the contract.
Oh, I thought you just said he didn't have it in the buyer agency agreement or the contract.
No, he didn't have
Okay.
I mean, it's not on.
Just
That's
when they
on
were sending
him.
everything over for title and everything, it wasn't
Right.
Yeah.
in that part.
And you guys know we can't ask somebody to show us their buyer agency agreement, right? Nor do you share your buyer agency agreement.
No, but the lenders might want it.
Lenders, the title company,
Lenders, yeah.
are
'Cause I've
the
had to
only
share. I've had to
ones
share
that
mine
to
with the
share it.
lender.
For that. But the good news, it ended up working out. They actually closed Friday, I think, of this week. So details matter.
Yeah.
And we just got to continue to educate the consumer. We get documentation all the time from ERA King that helps us navigate through that. So we are the lucky ones that we work for a company that supports us in that way.
Yep.
Have you gotten any of the Alabama contracts that they're just pulling from the state of Alabama? You see it just says,
I haven't, but I'm actually working a deal with an agent out of Montgomery, and apparently they use those. And so she's not used to our contract, and she's having to she's been asking me a lot of questions.
well,
The way
Montgomery never used one that was similar to us. I think they've
Yeah.
always used a state one, but the state one is so confusing because at
Yeah.
the end of it, like literally 3/4 of a page at the end is like seller accepted offer, everybody initials and sign. The next one is buyer
counter
offers.
Yeah.
And there's something else and that doesn't match. And then you go to another one that says seller rejected. So you literally got to figure out what place you are in with the contract and do any of these match. So literally I just worked with an agent on one and I'm like, it makes no sense. None of these match the process you're at. So we ended up typing in under the bottom one that buyer accepts this contract.
Don't make it harder than what it has to be.
Well, no, and
Exactly.
then when they finalized it, they actually sent back a 2-pager that says all that. And finally, I told the agent last night, I said, listen, I've never seen this before. I don't understand. This is all saying the same thing over and over again. There's just a word that's
It's
changed.
just redundant.
I said, just call the agent and say, you know what? We haven't seen this format. There's several that fit our situation. Where would you like me to sign? And just get it signed. Because she wasn't going to finalize the contract. So on their contract, there's not a place to finalize like we can finalize on ours.
And where was this out of?
a contract working with another agent
From which region, which area?
here.
This area,
really?
but it's the Alabama's
It's the
real
Alabama real estate.
estate contract. Ours is different. Ours
From the
is
MLS.
There is a different one in
There's
the
a different one.
MLS.
because ours is the Greater Birmingham through
Right.
our MLS.
Yes, yeah. This one they're pulling straight from the AREX.
Yeah,
AREX form.
it's
So
different.
anyway, that's the other part that's confusing is
So many out there.
there's so many out there and we've never seen them and we're not attorneys to be able to identify what needs to be done or not.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I kept copies of that to send up to the higher beings to say what, because we're going to keep running into it. We're going to keep seeing it
The higher beings.
from the higher beings, the ones that pay the attorneys and check mark everything
Yeah.
for us. The responsibility I do not want
Yeah.
for that. But I think it's settling down.
It is. I think
We're always
and
gonna
we're
have
getting
that
into the
one.
swing of things, and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
It is good.
Just make sure you're in your talk track routine. And I think sometimes it's just about how you present it
Right.
Yeah.
and your audience too.
Yeah.
You know, I'll use Matt as an example. Matt, I could literally take him down everything exactly the way it is, and he would be great with that. That's the way he wants to see it. But, you know,
First time home buyer.
your first time home buyer, they just
It's
want to
not-
buy the house.
Yeah.
Like I tell them to read and sign in DocuSign, and it comes back literally in 3 minutes. I'm like,
Like you did not read that.
this was 13 pages. You
Front
did
and
not,
back.
You did not read any of this.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best pieces of advice you ever gave me too is like if you've got especially first time home buyers, that contract is 14 pages long.
It is. It's
And so,
intimidating.
I just print off an extra copy of that and say, look, this is the document we're going to utilize. Please take it home. And when you have some time on your hands, like in between
Read it.
commercials or whatever, read the sucker.
Well, and that's
then-
why I put them in the buyer
Oh,
folders
yeah.
and
Right.
even in the seller's
Listing.
folder, the listing. Your seller needs to know what is going to come.
Mhm.
This is the contract that will come to you. Let's figure it out now on what questions you have, and then it makes it easy to hit the high points and then sign it and move on. So,
Yep.
At least one thing's different from us in like a car dealership. It's like you go into a car dealership, it's like going to the ER.
Yeah.
You can wipe 4 hours of your life off the calendar. And you're going to sit there and you're going to fill out paperwork after paperwork.
every
and you're talking to
paperwork.
somebody that doesn't have any capability of making decisions. It's the guys
Right.
behind the glass.
Right.
At least with us, we're moving, we're driving, we're talking. There's
Right.
change of scenery and the paperwork by comparison is a little bit less than what you do when you're buying a car.
Yes.
And it's,
Oh, you do. Our paperwork is probably less than anything, I can think of. But we just need to do it. No, buyers aren't going away. I saw another article on a group in Facebook this morning that literally agents are their own worst enemies. This agent literally said on Facebook, well, obviously I'm done. There are not going to be any more buyers by next year. So over the 60 days, we are not going to have buyers
Wait, we don't
buying
need houses anymore?
And her question, so how do I find listings? And I went,
Lord.
I'm like, that's the same boat you're in because there's no buyers. You're
Yeah.
not going to have any,
we're all going to live in tents.
like it's not gonna be that. Inventory is still low, which is
It's crazy,
It's-
especially considering how much new construction is going on around us.
it's a seller's advantage, and it continues. It's been an advantage for probably
Couple years.
since
COVID.
COVID.
And that makes it very difficult for us to price comparables. Like I have that situation with that gentleman that I'm working with right now, and trying to find a comp for one of his properties. Not that it's super unique. It's just it's in a location that just doesn't have a lot
It
of
doesn't
transition. And
yeah.
so I'm
it
finding
doesn't.
myself going back 12 months And that's not really great historical data to work through.
It's not. The good news about that is if we're having to do that, the appraiser's having to do it
Right.
too. So you can still kind of build your case from a price perspective. But we also have sellers that still want to price their house like it was in COVID. And
Yep.
that's why you're seeing so many days on market is that they're overpriced to start with, and they just have to feel the pain a little bit, and they slowly come down, and then guess what happens?
It sells.
You get a contract.
Yep.
And then we're also looking at, like especially Shelby County, where they're talking about, opening the roads up.
Right.
Because we all enjoy that weekend traffic down there.
We
But
love it. Actually, I'm jealous because I know they're going to the beach and I'm not going. I would go a different time. I wouldn't go during that time. It would take you 6 hours to get to the beach from where we live, which is only about 4.5 hours. You can be down there.
See, that's why I like having a boat. You just go out on the lake and you can find a beach.
Yeah, there's nothing about the smell of salt water. So, all right. Well, did that help?
That helped some, I would say. Yes.
Yeah.
Help you?
Sure.
Sure.
It's just every experience is going to be a little bit
Little
different. And
Learning process for all.
we just have to follow the guidelines and people to understand why. And that's what makes us great agents.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for joining us again today. So stay tuned for the next one.
Thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Your Neighbor, Your Agents. Please visit www.yourneighboryouragents.com.